Stop everything for a second before the news, because I need your support here. Hit like now and subscribe so you don't miss anything about City. This isn't just helping the channel, it's making sure you get the updates the moment they blow up. Deal? Then stay with me to the end, because today we've got 3 topics that affect Manchester City's present and future. An elite Bayern center-back with a contract until 2026 coming onto the radar, Oscar Bobb becoming a serious target inside the Premier League ahead of January, and an off-pitch number that says a lot about how big City have become, even in a tough year. Now we get to the part that divides the fan base most. When the schedule tightens, the truth shows up. And the truth about City this season is simple and, at the same time, dangerous. When the team is complete, it's a machine. When the team loses pieces at the back, the risk rises fast. That's why this name coming out of Munich isn't being mentioned for nothing. Dayot Upamecano's contract situation has a lot of people on alert. His deal with Bayern runs until the summer of 2026, which on paper feels far away. But in elite football, 2026 starts to feel like tomorrow, the moment you enter the decisive planning window. Big clubs don't wait for the clock to turn into panic. Big clubs map, observe, prepare an approach, and only then strike with real force. And here's the detail that changes the tone. There's backstage chatter suggesting any Upamecano exit isn't as straightforward as some fans imagine. People see the contract date and think, great, just wait and go in. But it doesn't always work like that. Bayern rarely let an asset of that level slip through their fingers without reacting. They can fast-track a renewal, adjust wages, shut the door with a high price, or make the player a central pillar of the project. And even when a player is closer to the end of a deal, there's always competition, always a bidding war, always some legal or sporting detail that jams the move. To give you a sense of the wider picture, Upamecano is being discussed in the same kind of conversation as other top European defenders, being monitored because of their contract situations. Marc Guéhi at Crystal Palace and Ibrahima Konate at Liverpool. That creates a parallel market, an opportunity market, where several giants keep watch at the same time. And when lots of giants are looking at the same shop window, there's no such thing as an easy deal. There's a battle, there's timing, there's strategy. From City's side, the context almost explains itself. Pep Guardiola has lived through a season where the first-choice backline has been dragged along by sheer force of will. Ruben Dias and Joško Gvardiol have been the most consistent foundation, while John Stones and Nathan Ake have been fighting their own bodies just to get a run of games. And this isn't criticism. It's a snapshot of modern football. Maximum intensity. Too many matches. Not enough recovery. The demands don't forgive. A lot of the time, Pep doesn't even have the option to rotate the way he'd like. You look at the minutes and you get the message without anyone saying a word. Dias and everything. Gvardiol almost always present when available and the manager managing the rest like someone balancing plates on a tightrope. Can you win like that? Yes. Can you get through a whole month like that? Maybe. Can you get through an entire season, with the calendar getting more brutal every year, without paying a price at some point? That's where the danger lives, because the calendar doesn't just tighten, it crushes. City facing 7 matches in 4 weeks isn't a scheduling detail. It's the kind of run that decides trophies, blows muscles, and charges interest on every accumulated minute. And when you add travel, big games, and mental pressure, you understand why depth has become the key word. It isn't luxury, it's survival. And yes, a big away win in the Champions League against Real Madrid lets fans breathe, lifts morale, gives an emotional cushion. But it doesn't reduce the squad's mileage. It doesn't change the fact the next match arrives quickly. It doesn't change the fact that modern football is a marathon being run like a sprint. So you ask yourself a simple question. What if City lose one of the 2 pillars, Dias or Gvardiol, in the middle of this avalanche? That's what keeps people up at night. One injury, one issue that turns into 2 weeks, one collision that turns into a month, and suddenly the department is thin. And when the defense gets thin, it isn't only the center back who suffers. The whole team changes. The holding midfielder drops deeper, the fullback hesitates, the keeper is more exposed, the attack loses freedom because it has to manage risk. One detail becomes a domino effect. That's why a name like Upamecano shows up as an elite solution. A good age profile, massive experience at Bayern, used to big matches, with the physical and technical profile that matches what City usually demand. The picture is, if you add a defender at that level, you're not just buying a center back. You're buying a safety margin. You're buying high-standard rotation. You're buying the chance not to improvise when the season starts collecting its debts. But again, here comes the twist. City aren't alone in watching this. Liverpool, Real Madrid, and Barcelona are being mentioned as clubs keeping an eye on how the situation develops. And when that trio enters the chat, reality shifts. Because then it becomes a game of influence. Sporting project versus sporting project. Where will I be more important? Where will I compete more? Where will I earn more? Which manager truly wants me? And it becomes a question of timing, too. The move may only get serious next summer when the market properly opens and pieces can move with more freedom. There's another factor as well. City are in a behind-the-scenes transition that not every fan notices day to day. With the change in leadership on the sporting side and Hugo Viana stepping into a prominent role after Txiki Begiristain's departure, there's a sense of a new stamp, a new signature, an identity being reinforced. And when an executive wants to make their mark, they usually go after clear squad needs with names that create immediate impact and make long-term sense. That's where reports of a strong rebuild come in. Important arrivals, heavy investment, and a window said to have been around 150 million. What does that tell us? It tells us the club isn't standing still. It tells us City are acting like a club determined to return to the top with force, even when a season doesn't go perfectly. And most of all, it tells us that if the internal reading is we need one more top-level center back, the response won't be timid, because City live a paradox. On one hand, the team stays competitive, fighting near the top, right on Arsenal's heels. On the other, the standard of excellence is now so high that any small weakness becomes a daily topic. And defense is the sector where weakness turns into punishment the fastest. A mistake there isn't a nearly, it's a goal. It's points dropped. It's a tie compromised. So I want to hear you, properly. Today, looking at the depth at center back, do you trust City can get through this marathon without bringing in another elite defender? Or do you think the club is flirting with danger because there aren't enough options? Comment, because this debate isn't about taste. It's about calendar maths and squad health. And now, hold on to this turn, because there's a topic that hits the base of the project and the heart of anyone who follows the club closely. Players who have talent but need minutes. And on that front, the name Oscar Bobb is starting to make a noise that no longer feels like a distant rumor. Oscar Bobb, Norwegian, 22, has always been treated as a refined winger, the kind you watch and think, this lad has something different. Ball control, quick decisions, reading tight spaces, the ability to break a line without needing brute force. The kind of player who, when it clicks, becomes a lethal weapon in tight matches. But at City, talent doesn't guarantee a clear path. Talent is the ticket. The real entry is opportunity. And opportunity, in Pep's side, is one of the hardest currencies to obtain. The competition in the forward areas is brutal, and it got even heavier after another summer of investment in creative pieces and attackers. And then what happens to many young players in a star squad happens. You can be ready, but the team is also ready. You can have quality, but there's a queue of people with quality and with history. And when decisive matches arrive, the manager tends to lean on what he trusts most for that specific moment. As if that weren't enough, Bobb's recent path was hit by a blow that changes everything. A leg fracture in the first week of the 2024-25 Premier League season. Think about the timing. He'd had a strong preseason in the United States, looking confident, sharp, light on his feet, showing signs he could finally earn a more consistent run of minutes. And then, out of nowhere, his body took him off the board. That kind of injury isn't just physical pain. It's an interruption of rhythm, a delay to development, a restart of the whole process. And at the top level, where the calendar waits for no one, you lose ground without meaning to. You come back and the team has moved on. You come back and someone has filled that gap. You come back and you have to regain not only form, but the manager's trust, the dressing room's perception, and your own confidence in contact and acceleration. Even so, one important point. Inside the club, belief in Bobb's potential hasn't died. City still assess him as a high-ceiling player, someone who could deliver a lot. But football isn't made only of ceiling, it's made of floor. And the floor is minutes. Without minutes, a player stalls. Without a run, a promise becomes a question. And that's where January starts to look like a crossroads. Because according to reports, Crystal Palace are watching Bobb closely, thinking about a move when the window opens. Palace want attacking options, they want speed with technique, they want players who can change games in transition and also in set attacking structures. And Bobb fits that idea. But there's a natural tug of war. City won't let him go cheap. Given his age and profile, the demand is likely to be high. And when a buying club looks at the market and compares alternatives, it tries to find the best path between cost and benefit. Palace, for example, have also been linked to Brennan Johnson at Tottenham. But then the numbers reality hits. Talk is of a valuation around 40 million, and Palace would prefer a loan scenario, not a heavy purchase. And when the heavy purchase drops out, Bobb becomes more attractive as an alternative, depending on the price and, above all, the structure. Because here's what City fans need to see. If Bobb leaves, it's unlikely the club will simply sell and be done. City tend to protect the future. That can show up as a buyback clause, a sell-on percentage, performance-based add-ons, appearance bonuses, triggers tied to output. It's the kind of negotiation where the club says, fine, go get minutes, but if you explode, we still have a door back in, or at least we share the upside. And then comes the painful question, does losing Bobb in January weaken the squad? It depends on the scenario. If he's not getting a run and there's no immediate space, a loan could be best for everyone. But if he leaves permanently with no safety net and becomes decisive at another Premier League club, the conversation changes tone very quickly. Because then it turns into the regret nobody wants to live through. We had a talent like that and didn't use him. So I'll throw it back to you honestly. Are you in the camp that wants to keep Bobb at all costs, even if he plays little, just to keep depth? Or do you prefer he goes out to play, grow, and City protect themselves with smart clauses? And pay attention, because the details starting to circulate behind the scenes is exactly about what structure Palace will prioritize when they realize certain market deals might stall. And if that happens, this conversation could accelerate in a way that catches a lot of people off guard. And that's exactly why I'm telling you. The next few weeks will be decisive for understanding whether this Upamecano story becomes something concrete, whether Oscar Bobb's future gets a new chapter as early as January, and how City will use all that off-pitch power to turn stability back into trophies. Now I want to know from you, which of these three stories most affects your confidence in Manchester City's future? Would you go hard for a top center-back next summer, keep Bobb at all costs, or do you think the club needs to prioritize another position? Drop your opinion in the comments because I read everything. And if this video helped you understand what's really happening behind the scenes, don't leave without hitting like, because that helps the content reach more City fans. Subscribe to the channel now and switch on notifications so you get the updates as soon as the news breaks. See you in the next video.